Now I know you guys love doodling, right? But have you ever tried doodling with pastels? In fact, that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to have some mixed media doodle fun with acrylic paint and also some pastels, and I'm going to use soft and pencil pastels for this. So let's get stuck in, and I'm working with craft paper, which is basically just the kind of brown paper that you find in wrapping parcels. You know the stuff I mean, don't you? And I've got this very handy pad form of it, and you'll find it listed below along with the other products that I've used today. Now I just want to cut up some sheets of this paper, and I'm going to use them as masks because, well, I'm kind of thinking I've got a geometric block of opaque colours for my acrylic paint layer, and that's kind of what's in my head today. And obviously you can go with whatever you want. This is just to help you and inspire you to, get you mixing up your acrylic paints with your pastels. So I've picked a couple of colours that I know will work really nicely on this craft paper, and hopefully they're gonna kind of look very striking against it. And those cut up craft pieces I'm gonna use to help me form some blocks of colour. Now this is so totally quick and easy to do, but you can always draw the shapes on instead if you prefer, that's fine, and then paint them in, or you could even use stencils if you've got them for whatever shape you want. And what about stamps? You could do this with stamping. But with this particular technique, if you've had trouble with this technique before, I will show you how to use it properly and also how to save it when it goes wrong. But more of that in a minute. But first I just want to do a quick shout out to my patrons, because you guys, can you spot some of the design tricks that I'm using in this piece? So whilst it grows, keep your eye out for those. Because recently I shared a video tutorial that kind of went through 4 of my favourite design and composition tricks with my Art Explorer and Above patrons. And I'm using a few of them in this project today. And if you're not a patron, you can check out the tutorials and other content that I've got over on Patreon via the links in the description. But also don't forget to subscribe here and hit that notification bell for your weekly art tips and tricks and inspiration here too. Now I really like this blocking out technique because, well, it's really easy to do and just really quick as well. I chose it today because I wanted that block print kind of look to my shapes, which you get with this technique. Now you know me, I use paper stencils a lot. They're just so versatile, but I know that people can have difficulties with them and not get the results they want. So I'm going to mess one up on purpose for you to show you how to do it properly, and also to show you how to fix it when you mess it up. So the main reason that you might have problems with this technique is that, well, you just got too much paint on your brush, or the brush is too wet. So in both cases, it's just too easy for the paint to sort of get underneath that paper mask. And it'd be the same if you were using any kind of stencil really. But always think less is more when you're using masks and stencils and any of these kind of things. And build up the layers of paint slowly to get cleaner lines and the intensity that you want. But here's a couple of tricks and tips for if it goes wrong or if you're just not getting the look you want. Now, first of all, if you're finding that your mask is just too wet with paint, then cut yourself a new one. Make sure your brush is super dry and you can squeeze off any excess water onto a piece of kitchen towel or a piece of cloth. Now, I just sort of use my fingers to hold the paper masks down, but I know that's not for everybody, and you could easily use masking tape to hold them down or washi tape, so go with whatever's more convenient for you. Pick up a very small amount of paint on your brush, and if you're not sure, then just work more of the paint off of your brush on the palette or a spare piece of paper before working on the project with it. And what really works for these kind of paper masks is to just go in one direction with your brush. So whenever you've got fresh paint on your brush, place it on the mask first and then wipe it across the mask onto the piece. And this way, if you've got too much paint on your brush, it's going to go on the mask. And also you're working in the direction of the mask and not against the mask. If you're working against the mask, then you can easily sort of like push it, tear it, or get underneath it by accident. Whereas if you're working with the mask, then that's just less likely to happen. But when your brush gets emptier of paint, then you can risk going along the line of the mask more often there, and you'll probably get away with it. But as soon as you reload that brush with more paint, then make sure that you're always going from the mask onto the piece and not the other way around. Now, another top tip is when you're working with multiple masks, and as you can see there's some places here where I'm kind of holding down quite a few pieces of paper at once. And if you find you're in that situation where you've got quite a lot of pieces to hold in place, then work on that area first. And then once you finish that area, you can probably stop holding one of the pieces at least. Now, I've got two colours down and I think it might be time to change it up with another colour, but I'm not sure which colour I want to use. So I'll just do a bit of swatching out first and see how that colour's going to work to get the look that I want. And this is again where those masks come really handy, because I've used them with the same, I've made them out of the same pieces of paper that I'm using as my substrate. I can just do some very quick swatches on it and go over some of the colours that I've been using and see how they look. Now, I've been using opaque colours to give me the blocks that I wanted, and I could change it up and go semi-opaque if I liked, or semi-transparent, like this red. And it's going to completely change up how it looks, because as you layer it over the colours that are already on there, it's going to change that colour. And you know, that's great, that might be the way you want it to look, so go for it. But in fact, I'm going to stick with my opaques, and the next one I'm going to put down is a pink. And then once I've got those shapes down, I'm going to let it completely dry before I go on to start using my pastels. So I'm using two different types of pastels today, and I've got some pastel pencils and also some soft pastels in a block form. Now, you'll find soft pastels in both blocks and kind of rounds, and they're called soft pastels because they tend to be really, really crumbly. Now, I chose pastels today because, well, it isn't a medium that I use a lot, and I thought it would be just a good excuse to get them out and use them some more. Also, I thought they would work really well on this surface because, well, it's the craft colour works really well with pastels, and I wanted some nice strong colours that would complement the colours that are already down. And I think pastels would do that really nicely for me. Plus, also, because I'm using the pencils and the blocks, they're great for doing lots of mark making and doodle shapes. But there are a couple of things you need to consider when you're working with pastels. And, well, one of the big ones is that they're just so messy. Especially the soft pastels. Just super messy. And you don't want all that crumbly material on your project or on your workspace either. I mean, for one reason, it's, not great for the project because you're going to smear and smudge if it just gets too much. And you could end up with unwanted bits all over your work. But two, and probably more important reason, is that you don't want this sort of dust hanging around where you could accidentally pick it up and ingest it or breathe it. It does kind of get everywhere. I mean, it's like any products that we use. You just got to kind of be aware of what you're using and what you're doing with it. So I do have a couple of tips for you to help you when you're working with your pastels. And the first one is kind of a best practice for when you're working with most art materials, and that is to not eat and drink whilst you're working. The second tip is to tap the dust particles onto a spare piece of paper, or better still, a wet piece of kitchen towel, and that will kind of contain the dust for you. And also, it's a good idea to use a wet piece of kitchen towel or a wet cloth to clean up your workspace from time to time as well, to capture any of the other dust that's kind of got all over there. And you don't want to be blowing the dust off because then it will just literally go everywhere. And you also don't really want to be using your hand or a brush to sort of wipe it off, because what's going to happen then is that you're much more likely to smear it all over your work if you do that. And it is going to get all over your hands, so do wash them quite regularly, especially if you've finished a section or you're changing to another product. So I hope some of those tips will help you when you work with pastels. And I think it's one of the reasons I don't use them a lot, because I just don't like the feel of them and the mess that is produced. But I'm trying to get over my hang up with them, because I really do love the intense colour that you can get with them and the interesting mark making opportunities that you get with these particularly. They're quite unlike other materials that you could use. But I would love to hear how you get on with pastels and what you use them for and what type of pastels you use. So let me know in the comments below. Now I kept on adding pastel mark making doodles all over this piece, and I went through several rounds of, right, that's it, I'm done, to, is it really done? Maybe if I just add something else. And I just kept doing this all the way through. Even to the point where I was sort of changing up colours. I don't know why, but I just really wanted to add in that acid green colour. So I did. I just kept on going and kind of pushing it until I got to that yellow layer. And then what was going through my mind that layer was I thought that would be the one that kind of brought it together, gave it a harmony and finished it off. But when I put it down, it was just looking too flat. Now what I'd done before I put that yellow circle down was I'd made myself a little mock yellow layer just to test out how it would look. And I hadn't filmed that particular bit. I was just sort of trying it out quite quickly just to see. So here, let me do it again for you to show you what I did. And I just drew out a quick yellow circle on one of my masks, cut it out, and then tested it on the piece to sort of see if it would work. And it was kind of a great way of doing it without committing, and you know, helps you make your mind up. But you know what? I decided that I actually liked how the test yellow circle worked on the circle that I finally put there. So I decided to just add it, and I didn't want to add it too flatly, so I just stuck it down in a couple of places so it would still sort of have a little bit of dimension. And then once I'd done that, I kind of liked the second test yellow circle as well. So I added that one in too. It's kind of strange how these things develop, isn't it? So if you're looking for some more mixed media doodling inspiration, then watch these videos next, and I'll see you there.